Hi, welcome to 7 Report. Thanks for visiting us today. This marks the introduction of a new category, a new series for 7 Report that we refer to as Vape U, or Vape University if you prefer. Now, we do not pretend to be experts in any way about vaping. No, we're not scientists, we're not doctors, we're not researchers, none of that. We are just vaping enthusiasts, relatively new to this whole world of vaping, but we're learning as we go, and our desire is to pass some of that knowledge on to you. We know that with the explosive growth of vaping, there are many people coming to it every day and looking for answers to some of their questions. And so that's what this video series, Vape U, is all about. Today we start off with what we think is kind of basic, just a brief history of vaping. I hope you enjoy it. And again, thanks for stopping by. Please be sure to visit the website 7report.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Oh, and embrace the vape. Hi, welcome to a brief history of vaping on 7 Report. Vaping, the use of personal vaporizers or electronic cigarettes, still a relatively new phenomenon, although sales are projected to reach about $1.7 billion by the end of this year in the United States. Now that's still just a relatively small percentage of traditional tobacco sales, which hover around the $94 billion a year mark. But tobacco sales have been declining steadily over the past few decades, while the vaping industry continues to see explosive growth. Most people trace contemporary vaping to 2003 and Chinese pharmacist Han Lik. Now, Han was a heavy smoker, and his father had recently died of lung cancer when he began to develop a safer means of ingesting nicotine. Han Lik worked for Golden Dragon Holdings, and the company fully supported the development of his product, going so far as to eventually change the name of the company to Ruyan, which means like smoke. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Seeing how Han Lik's main purpose was to develop a safer, healthier alternative to smoking, we need to take at least a cursory look at tobacco. Now, tobacco is a member of the potato family, closely related to potatoes and tomatoes and chili peppers and paprika and petunias and deadly nightshade, among others. And all of these plants contain measurable amounts of nicotine. Tobacco is native to both North and South America, and Native Americans may have used it as early as 5000 BC, mainly for medicinal and ceremonial purposes, smoking it mainly in pipes. Christopher Columbus took a small amount of it back, seeds and leaves, after his first trip in 1492 to the New World. And it would take another 150 years or so before tobacco came into widespread use in Europe, though it was introduced earlier in France in 1556, Portugal in 1558, Spain in 1559, and then in England in 1565. An Englishman living in Virginia, John Rolfe, first cultivated tobacco back in 1612. For nearly 200 years, tobacco's use was limited mainly to pipes and chewing and snuff. Cigars started gaining popularity in the late 1800s. Crude cigarettes had been around since the 1600s in a limited supply, but became more widespread with the introduction of bright tobacco, a cured yellow leaf from North Carolina and Virginia, shortly after the Civil War. Now, the late 1880s saw cigarette sales surge again with the development of white burley tobacco and the advancement of the first practical mass production cigarette making machine. Over the next 200 years or so, cigarettes enjoyed huge growth. But by the 1960s, the health hazards of smoking tobacco cigarettes were widely known, and the tobacco industry came under increased criticism and legislation. In 1988, the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company introduced the ill-fated Premier brand of smokeless cigarettes. Now, they had a charcoal tip that, when lit, heated and aerosolized the tobacco. The Premier brand never caught on. It cost R.J. Reynolds over $325 million to develop it. It was the focus of the 1993 HBO film Barbarians at the Gate, which starred James Garner. I think we have a clip of that right now.
We've spent $350 million and we've come up with a turd with a tip? God almighty, Ed. We poured enough technology into this project to send a cigarette to the moon, and we come up with one that tastes like it took a dump?
We haven't even talked about the smell.
Well, what'd they say that was like? A fart?
Yep.
Oh, you're not serious. They really said that?
We've got an awful lot of fart figures, sir, yes.
Tastes like shit and smells like a fart. We got ourselves a real winner here. It's one goddamn unique advertising slogan, I'll give you that.
Oh, little wonder it never caught on. Now, Reynolds did try to reintroduce the Premier under the name Eclipse in 2000. That didn't go anywhere either. But we've gotten a little ahead of ourselves again. Let's go back to 1963 and Herbert A. Gilbert, veteran of the Korean War, had a BA in business, was working at his father's scrapyard in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, when he came up with the idea for the first electronic cigarette. Now, Gilbert's design called for a battery-powered heat source that would turn flavored water into steam that could be inhaled. He filed a patent for his smokeless, non-tobacco cigarette on April 17, 1965. Got the patent, shopped this invention around to tobacco, pharmaceutical, and chemical companies, but he found no takers. His prototypes were destroyed in a fire at the warehouse at the Beaver Falls scrapyard where he had stored them. Now we jump ahead almost 40 years to 2001. Stefan Vlachos designed his own prototype electronic cigarette, but never patented his idea, and he gave up on plans to manufacture it when Han Lik's model went into the marketplace in 2003. In April of 2006, electronic cigarettes were introduced to Europe, and over the course of the next few months, entered the U.S. market. In March of 2009, the U.S. FDA added electronic cigarette devices to a list of forbidden products and had the U.S. Customs and Border Protection reject any e-cigarettes from being imported into the United States. Well, that move began a series of lawsuits, injunctions, countersuits, and rulings in the U.S. A federal judge ruled against the FDA and ordered them to stop blocking the import of electronic cigarettes in January of 2010. Well, since then, the vaping industry in the U.S. and around the world has experienced some explosive growth. But controversy continues. Many nations have enacted tough legislation or outright bans on the sale of vaping devices, and public health organizations have used fear tactics, stated opinion as fact, misrepresented and misinterpreted studies, and a continuing effort to restrict the availability and the spread of vaping devices and e-juice. But the vaping community is not in this alone. There are scientists and researchers at public and private universities and companies, and even some governmental agencies that continue to warn against prematurely limiting the growth of vaping, especially in light of so many studies that show that vaping is exponentially safer and healthier than smoking traditional tobacco cigarettes. And as many of us vapors know, vaping is the most effective method to quit smoking tobacco cigarettes, though there's no official organization, private or governmental, that has issued that opinion. But we know, and for now, that sustains us. Embrace the vape. We told you it was a brief history of vaping. Although I do hope that you enjoyed it, maybe even learned something a little bit new. We would love to hear your thoughts on Vape U, or anything else that you find on 7report.com or on our YouTube channel. There are comment sections below the videos and below each post on the website. Again, thanks so much for taking part today, and we hope that you'll be back again soon. 7report.com. Please visit and embrace the vape.